power in Washington. It is time you made good on the promises you have made to our community since the 1970s. Now we are demanding that you make good on them. The gay community wants total and equal rights. Total and equal rights to the straight community, including marriage. Domestic unions and civil partnerships given to us are separate and they're not equal. When African Americans had to drink from separate water fountains, it wasn't because, and they said, oh, well, you're drinking the same water, that's separate but equal. We knew it was because the white bigots diminished the value of African Americans. Well, to tell us not to accept, to take marriage, but to accept civil unions is to diminish the value of our relationships, and gay love is not worth less than theirs. Straight people and the Yes on 8 people, how has my marriage affected you? 50% of straight marriages end up in divorce. 80% of people, mostly men, do not pay child support. 3 out of 4 children are sexually abused. And speaking of sexually abused, the Mormons campaigned against us limiting marriage to 1 man and 1 Mormon. The Mormons, who despite the denial cannot even begin to prosecute the number of polygamous marriages where child sexual abuse is rampant, and they have the nerve to call us immoral. This is not a movement about our lifestyle. It is a movement about our lives. For years, science has called us sick, and religion has called us sinful. For years we were subjected to mental institutions and penal institutions and shock therapy and being rejected by our families. Our youth has the highest suicide rate, and we have one of the highest drug addiction and alcohol addiction rates because of the indignities that have been heaped upon us. No more, never again, it ends now. Lesbian and gays are on the street across this country. I want to emphasize that we need to follow the nonviolent teachings of Dr. Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi. There are those here tonight who are not a part of our community and who want to make this demonstration and all of our demonstrations violent. Don't do it. We are better than that. Angry and yes, but don't do it. They have come from outside communities to make us look bad and to riot, and we're not going to do it.
Don't do it! Don't do it!
We are fighting for the right to love and have our relationships recognized, and therefore we must go beyond our anger and refuse to be violent. But here's what we are going to do. We are going to wait for the Supreme Court to hopefully do the right thing and rule that Prop 8 is invalid. But if they don't, I would call on millions of lesbian and gays across this country to take to the streets the day of the decision and vow never to stop protesting until we are full citizens with equal rights. Are you ready to stay on the streets? But if they don't, and if they rule against equal rights, we will put an amendment back on the ballot in 4 years. Only this time we will not let the incompetent, undemocratic leaders who self-appointed themselves to head our campaign. It will be a grassroots movement that will start a petition the day after a negative decision to put this proposition back on the ballot that we are entitled to full equal marriage rights. Are you ready to organize? If the Democratic Party and Barack Obama does not support us by giving us total equal rights this time, then we must withdraw support from them. Are you ready to hold the Democratic Party accountable? I am 66 years old. In 1978, I was the first to call for the March on Washington that happened in 1979. I produced the main stages for the 87 March, which was about AIDS, and the 93 March, and called for a march in 2000. I am now calling for another million or more person march on Washington. We need, if it doesn't change, you can say, well, we marched before, it didn't help. Yes, it did. We need to mobilize our youth, and youth, you need to carry on the leadership of this movement like you carried on for hours after the older leaders had left in front of the Mormon church. Are you ready to lead? Are you ready for another? All right, good. Yes, we are. Yes.
we
Let me hear from you.
we are. Yes, we are.
Are you ready for another march on Washington?
We are. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
We must not make this a fight with the African American community, or we will all slide to the bottom. We must recommit ourselves to fighting racism whenever it occurs, because injustice to one, said Dr. King, is injustice to it all. The right wing wants to divide us. We are not going to be divided. And we need to remember the numerous churches and religious individuals, like the 250 California rabbis who sided with us. Thank you very much. But finally, we must see ourselves as a civil rights movement and act accordingly. As Kate Millett, the great lesbian feminist author, wrote in the 1970s, we must never forget the nights of our love and the days of fighting for our freedom. What do we want? Civil rights. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Civil